Okay. So for today's daily take, I'm talking about something called pre-inspections. What do I mean by this? So a pre-inspection would be a home inspection that's done by the seller prior to listing or at time of list, as a means to, I would say, speed up the process of offers and such like that. I've seen this done, especially in cases where the seller expects a lot of attention to be on the property, and so rather than trying to get, say, 10, see 10 offers with all home inspections clauses in there, they would prefer to essentially have the inspection done ahead of time and say, here's the report, have a read through it, and then hopefully you don't need an inspection. So from my take on this, first of all, is that an inspection's only a pre-inspection, but an inspection in general is only as good as the inspector doing it. What do I mean by that is that some inspections are, in my opinion, better than others. Some inspectors have a higher degree of knowledge and use the proper equipment that can, I wouldn't say guarantee that they're going to find everything, but certainly improve the chances of finding something within the inspection. So in the local market, we all know that there's some inspectors that are very forthright and that do a pretty good job. To these inspectors, I say it would be a somewhat of a benefit to do a pre-inspection. The reason I say this is because the majority of the local agents are going to look upon that inspection report with they're going to look favorably on the report. They're going to trust that report. Whereas other inspectors, whether it be from local or from out of town that maybe the local agents do not know, they're going to say, well, I don't really know this person. I can't really trust this report because I've never dealt with this person. And so the validity of that report kind of is diminished because of it. The same would go for someone that's from out of town. If they're from out of town and they come in to do the inspection, and the majority of agents do not know who this person is, that report's isn't going to help those buyers or their agents feel good about the report itself. The same can also be said for out-of-town agents that are coming into the local market that may not know who that inspector is. Sure, they could look them up online and check their credentials, but there still is a trust that's associated with having dealt with a particular person in a particular market, like we have here, and I'm sure the same would go for areas like Kitchener or Brantford or London, where there's just some of those home inspectors and contractors alike that are looked upon as they know what they're doing, they know what they're talking about, and if they put it in their report, it should stand up. So my take on it is that a lot of times, if you're going to do a pre-inspection report, it's somewhat of a I don't want to say it's not really going to hurt, but it may not have the effect that you want it to have, because I'm not convinced yet that the majority of buyers will look at that report and see something that they can 100% trust, because their inspector hasn't looked at it, or their inspector hasn't done the testing themselves, and maybe they don't know the person that did the report, and anything that's paid for by the seller will be looked at as having a potential bias, in my opinion. So if I had a buyer that was looking at a house that had a pre-inspection done, that was sitting on the table ready to be looked at, I'd certainly say, let's take a look and see what it says. But would I be able to put my confidence in it 100% of the time? I would say no. But there are some inspectors around that if I did see the report and it had their name on it, and it was sitting on the table paid for by the seller, For the most part, I'd be able to say, hey, that's an inspector that I've worked with. Never heard too many bad things about them. I'm sure everybody has missed something along the way, but that can happen at any time. So all in all, I think that it's not going to hurt. Aside from the cost associated, which is $300-$400 to the seller, it may help. It may be that thing that tells a buyer that, hey, there's nothing wrong with this house. The other thing that I like about it from the seller's perspective is it gives you a chance to rectify things before you even hit the market if need be. So if you find out that there's a few maintenance items or there's a few things that should be taken care of in the near future, you have the ability to go and do those things and then be able to say, hey, this is done. We just did X, Y, and Z because they were maintenance items, things that were recommended by our inspector to do, and we wanted to leave the house in a good condition for you, and we wanted to do everything in our power to make sure that you were not getting, you weren't getting something that had problems, and thus coming back to us down the road and saying you owe us money or trying to make a case for us knowing about an issue that we didn't know about prior to sale. So there is some advantages there for sellers. I don't know from a marketing type tactic that it's always the greatest, because I still believe that most buyers are still going to look at it and go, yeah, but that's the report that the seller had done. And there's that potential bias that I think is people just understand that it might be there. Not everybody. Again, I still see there being some positives. I don't see enough negatives not to do it. But again, it's $300 or $400 that do you want to have that out of pocket in the case that someone else says, I still want to do an inspection, which may or may not happen. So all in all, I don't think it's a bad thing. I just don't know that it's the best thing in terms of a marketing tactic or anything like that. So hope that was somewhat clear. I don't think it was. I think it was a little rambly, but anyway, that's kind of my opinion on it. It is a little bit of a mixed bag, and again, it probably depends on the house sometimes. A brand new house, most people probably are going to say, I'm good without an inspection, or it isn't as big of a deal to them. A little bit of an older house that maybe has some perceived problems or flaws just because of its age, to see that report and a clean bill of health of the home might just be something that does help satisfy some of the buyers' concerns, especially ahead of offer. But I still don't know if it's going to be enough for them not to do an inspection altogether. Again, it depends on the inspector. It depends on how valid the buyer sees that report in being, and each buyer is going to be different. Each house is going to be different. So I think it really comes down to communicating with your agent, understanding some of the pros and cons for your house and your situation. Again, it also goes back into pricing. So it also comes back to what kind of a marketing tactic are you going to take from a price point from that kind of perspective. Are you holding off on offers or not? That's another big thing, that if you're holding offers until a certain date, that doesn't really allow for, or it kind of pushes competitiveness. And I mean, it's a strategy that can be talked about, but it pushes competitiveness and doesn't really allow for people to put that home inspection clause in. And so you might see people that say, hey, I'm not going to offer because I'm not comfortable without having a home inspection. And in that case, maybe they will be. So there is some things where there's some situations where I definitely think it can help. I don't think that you should say never do a pre-inspection prior to listing. I just think that it's very situational, and it's not one size fits all. It's not always going to work. Some buyers are still going to want to have their inspector, or sometimes their family member that knows that they're away around a construction site to have a look at the house before they purchase. So at the end of the day, that's kind of how I see it. There is one more thing that I would mention. That is how busy the market is, and also how busy the home inspectors are. So if the lead time needed to get an inspector to the house in your area is significant, a week or two, that is a concern that I would have as a seller, to say I don't want to tie my house up for an extra week or so here, while the market continues to turn, and while I can't really accept an offer. I can say a backup offer, but I can't accept another offer, and it kind of puts my listing on hold. And so I feel like I'd rather have this here and not take the home inspection clause and take that waiting period out. So there is that as well. Again, that's market conditions, and that is how busy your area is and how busy the inspectors are in the area. So all things to consider. Again, I think there is a case to be made for doing pre-inspections. I just am not really confident that it is a one-size-fits-all scenario that helps every single time. So again, talk to your agent and come to that determination yourself. And again, it also depends on your house. So anyway, I hope that helps. I know it was rambly, but I don't re-record, so I hope you enjoy it, and I hope it helps. And maybe somebody that is going through this or considering this, and maybe this is some information that helps them, and that's what I hope it does. So thanks for listening, and I hope you're all having a good day.